Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all. I can see many of you anyway on the screen next to me. Welcome to First Congregational Church. We are still persistently people along the way, learning, growing, and acting in faith. If you are joining First Congregational Church for the first time today, we are glad that you joined us on this very unusual time. If you have any questions or want to chat later, feel free to contact me directly. You can see phone numbers on the website and pretty much anywhere else. The bulletin is on the website. It's on the homepage at fccak.org. There's a button that says this Sunday in worship, and there's a bulletin button, and you can find it from there. And that will have all of the responsive readings and the words to any hymns that we're singing today. However, there will be a few times, including when the hymns are being sung, that we will put the words of the hymns on your screen, so you'll be able to see those. As for our service today, your microphone is now muted. We're going to minimize the moments when microphones will be unmuted. So the only time that will happen is during the prayers of the people. If you would like to share a prayer request with everyone, you are invited to unmute your microphone then. However, you could also just type in your prayer request in the chat, and I will be able to see it and be able to read them aloud to everyone. Feel free to turn your microphone or your cameras off and on whenever you like. And like every week, unfortunately, if you run into technical difficulties with your computer or device, we will not pause the service to solve those problems. If you have a persistent problem that you need help with, make sure to contact me during the week, and we can resolve most issues over the phone. If your computer or device or internet is just not working, you can always call in to the service to at least be able to hear the audio of the service, and that doesn't require any internet. Those instructions are in the bulletin and on the website, so it's pretty easy to find that. Make sure and check the bulletin for announcements. We still have a lot of programs that are going on. We're even going to be doing something with Friday Food and Fun, which is this Friday, I think. I think so. I think it's this coming Friday, the last Friday of this month. And we'll be doing ordering a restaurant to either have delivery or pickup, and then we'll be eating lunch together. So look for more information on that coming in the daily update this week. Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. Thanks, Crystal. And there are also other programs that we're normally doing. The Remembering 400. This week we'll be talking about different statements of faith and documents from congregational history, going back all the way to the 1700s up until about 1913. So it's a broad swath. It should be pretty fun, though. Today is our semi-annual congregational meeting, which will begin immediately following the service. So make sure and stay for that. Even if you don't think of yourself as a member of the church, you are welcome to stay and join in that discussion, or at least see what's going on. Everyone is invited to stay for that. So today, among other things, we will be electing fellow members to serve on ministry teams and as officers of the church. So this is where we elect the leaders who do the work on a daily basis to maintain the work of the church behind the scenes often. The report for the meeting with all of the different ministry reports went out on Friday in the daily update email. If you didn't get that and you would like to get a copy, just email the office and we can make sure you get one. Now let our service continue. If you would join me with your microphone still muted as we share in the responsive reading. I think we have a volunteer who's a single volunteer ready to go. Sing a new song.
A springtime shout out to life.
Sing praise to our joyful Easter God,
whose power brings new life out of death.
Immerse doubt and despair in the fountain of new birth.
Find refreshment and strength for a future of hope.
For God has taken ordinary things
and made them extraordinary, Sing a new song.
And we have a musical offering today, and I think I'm not going to say anything. Actually, we're just going to try it. It's Lori tried a new program that the choir has been working with called a cappella. So this is our first go around with that. So I'm pretty excited about it. It's really good. Here we go.
Bright and beautiful, all things both great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all. Each little flower that opens, each little bird that sings, He made their glowing colors, He made their tiny wings. The cold wind in the winter, the pleasant summer sun, the ripe fruits in the garden, He made them every one. The purple-headed mountains, the meadows where we play, the rushes by the water, we gather every day. Every day He gave us eyes to see them, and lips that we might tell how great is God Almighty, who has made all things well, all things well.
Thanks, Lori. Yes, I can see people clapping in the video. That was wonderful. I think that worked about as well as we've done so far. So we're getting here. We're getting there. So for today, for the children's moment, I'm going to have an illusion that we're going to talk about. You may have seen this before or something like it. I think you can see this on the camera. There is a cluster of blue circles surrounding an orange circle in the middle. Now, most of the time, if you were to guess, and we're not going to vote, but in your own mind, which one of the orange dots looks bigger? Now, maybe you're clever, or maybe you've seen this before, or maybe you're just smarter than the average person. But most of the time, people would say, if they were to be honest with themselves, that this orange dot looks larger than this orange dot. But it's an illusion. They are the same size. So there's an interesting thing about this particular illusion, that there's two ideas about why this orange dot looks bigger than this orange dot. One is that in comparison to the blue dots around it, it's the size comparison makes the difference. That because this orange dot is surrounded by smaller things, it makes it look larger. And because this orange dot is surrounded by bigger things, it makes it look smaller. But there's also another thought about why this illusion works. And then the other thought is that the distance between the orange dot in the middle and the blue dots on the outside, that the space between that. So if you think about it even as like a circle, a smaller circle around and a bigger circle around, there's been some studies done that when you're filling up a plate with food, if someone says, fill a small plate and a large plate with the same amount of food, that most of the time we'll fill the large plate with more food just because of the size comparison. But that's the illusion. There's also something else about this illusion that I actually want to talk about today. I didn't know this until very recently, is that they've also done two other sort of studies of this illusion. That if they show this to children that are under 10, sometimes, and most of the time under 7, that the kids they're not tricked by the illusion, that they actually see the orange dots as the same size, which makes people think that maybe there's almost some socialization aspect going on why we perceive one as different than the other. But there's also another study that they did with people, and if you can, I'm going to hold this up to the screen a little bit closer, and if you make like a pincher shape with your fingers, like you're going to grab that orange ball, and if you make that shape, there you go, I see you, Kathy, thanks, Kathy. So if you go to grab one ball and you do the muscle memory of your finger, and then you look at the other orange ball, whichever one you looked at first, then look at the second one, and make the same pincher size as you're going to grab it, and your body will automatically make the same size space between your fingers. So there's two things going on, your perception of what you see, and then your muscle memory knows how big the orange ball is, and it will make the same gap regardless of which one you're reaching for. Now I say all this because we're going to talk about stories today. We're going to talk about sort of big stories that are almost like otherworldly and fantastic. So when something, we read like a story of maybe, stories of mythology where there's great beasts or dragons or these epic stories, that our reading of that story has a lot to do with other stories we read in the past, what cultural context we come from. But there are also some aspects of stories that we also just understand as human beings. So it's interesting to think about the way that you perceive something and the way that your body reacts to something can be very different things. So as we think about what it means to even think about or follow in the way of Jesus, no matter how old we are, that we are influenced by not only people around us, but almost as if our body is reacting to it. And sometimes those give you two different answers. And the reality is sometimes children know things, they still know things that either I have forgotten or chosen to understand differently. So if there are any kids out there watching right now, I'm not sure, if you would join me as we share a blessing together. God, for the ways that we change and that we grow and we adapt to our world, we give thanks for those around us who are helping us. And we trust that we have something to bring, that we see things in different ways than people around us, that we understand our world differently than the person next to us, and that brings breadth and depth to our world. May be with us this week as we continue our work from home and figuring out how to play and live in our own yards. Amen. For our invitation to giving, I want to remind everyone again that there are multiple ways that you can still participate in the life of the church through financial means and your time and your talents. We are still meeting on a regular basis in Zoom rooms to discuss the actual work of the church and to even discuss things that are not yet so. We're still planning things into the future, which is wonderful. But people can still send in checks. They can mail them to the church, that the mail is being checked on a regular basis. But you can also, if you haven't before, you can go to the website, and up in the top right corner, there is a button for giving on the website, where you can give a one-time or recurring gift. Before this time of, in addition to that, stewardship, and we're going to talk about this during the semi-annual meeting after the service, but I want to mention it now too, that I had a third request yesterday even, that we set up an account in the church's books that is a congregation support fund or help fund. So it's if people in the congregation come into financial difficulty in the next few months or next 6 months or however long, that there will be a fund where the church can help support our fellow members, either by helping offset payments of rent and utilities and groceries and those sorts of things. So as of right now, that account is specifically for support of people within the congregation. That's the plan. And it's sort of inviting people, as we receive our stimulus checks from the government, however that may look for you, that you can set aside part of that, or however much of that that you would like, and the church will manage how that gets distributed. So it's also, of course, works as a donation. And there will be a three-person team, one person from worship, one person from stewardship, and myself, sort of trying to make those determinations on how that money is distributed to people who have need. So there are lots of ways that we can still participate. So however you give, however you participate, please join me in our dedication of gifts. Loving God, can a generous prayer be lifted up to you this Eastertide? Can these gifts, given with love, be further transformed like echoes of grace, delighting all who receive their blessings? May it be so, through the surprising power of your Holy Spirit. And may our lives speak of a loving God, full of Easter surprises. Amen. As a reminder, if you have any prayer requests that you would like me to read aloud for the congregation, you are free to do that now. I do have a couple new concerns to mention. I know that people have sent them in the chat before, and they may not have translated to the prayer list as effectively as I would have hoped, but I'm trying to reorganize that a little bit. So hopefully those will show up here soon. But this week we have two additions. Laura Stevies, she's a family of Miguel, and she was diagnosed with COVID-19, and she also was giving birth to a child, which it seems to be a common experience for pregnant mothers. Also, we pray for Elizabeth Cackline for some ongoing health concerns. From Kate, prayers for my friend's son, Michael, who is recovering from COVID-19. From Aaron Binnick, prayers for the doctors, nurses, and everyone else who leaves the safety of their homes to help keep everything running. From Kathy Means, please pray for my sister, Marie, whose 2 daughters moved in with her, plus a boyfriend and a grandson. And she is currently sick and worried about having a coronavirus or COVID-19. I don't know, Furman sent one to the privately. I assume that means you would like that to be held privately. Can you give me a thumbs up on that, Furman? Would you like me to read that out loud? Or? Okay, thanks, Furman. Furman also sends a prayer request for the Dolan family in Australia at the passing of Brian Dolan, father-in-law of Tracy Dolan, Jeanette's daughter. We continue to hold the people on our ongoing prayer list with us. We hold them in our prayers and our thoughts. That list is still in the daily or in the bulletin on a weekly basis. For those who are dealing with loneliness and isolation, we send our prayers with them that the Spirit of God would give them comfort and companionship. For those struggling with the loss of income or whose family is dealing with difficulties, including illness and death and uncertainties about their future, we remember them. Spirit of God, rest in this place surrounding your people. In our silence, open us to the ways of Christ living among us. Impossible God, you make all things possible. You make all things new. You called forth light when your Spirit hovered over the waters, and there was light. You breathed into the dirt and brought forth humanity. You raised Christ from the tomb. You continue to bring forth life out of death. You raise flowers from the earth after cold winters. And we know that you will bring forth life again. And this time, may we deepen our trust in you. May we strengthen our faith in humanity, that love can overcome our hates and our fears. May we broaden our understanding of love to all who are in need. May we rise from this time with lessons learned and strive to build a better world of kindness and caring. And may we remember those who are risking their lives to save lives, and those who are keeping our communities running and making it possible to have food and vital services. May we do our part to ensure their health and safety now and in the time to come. And working in new ways for enough money for health care for everyone. Impossible God, may we learn that nothing is impossible with you. We can change the world because you are with us. We can love one another without fear and hatred because you are with us. We can become a new creation because you are with us. Remind us, teach us, and guide us in the name of the one who taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Our scripture reading today is from Genesis chapter 6. When the number of people started to increase throughout the fertile land, daughters were born to them. And the divine beings saw how beautiful these human women were, so they married the ones they chose. And the Lord said, my breath will not remain in humans forever, because they are flesh. They will live 120 years. In those days, giants, Nephilim, lived on the earth, and also afterward, when divine beings and human daughters had sexual relations and gave birth to children. These were the ancient heroes, famous men. And the Lord saw that humanity had become thoroughly evil on the earth, and that every idea their minds thought up was always completely evil. And the Lord regretted making human beings on the earth. And the Lord was heartbroken. And so the Lord said, I will wipe off the land, the human race I've created. From human beings to livestock to the crawling things to the birds in the skies, because I regret I ever made them. But as for Noah, the Lord approved of him. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. It's actually quite fitting that Lori shared the musical offering today. It was in a staff meeting not that long ago. It was either a month ago or 75 years ago. I can't tell. You know, it took Noah 100 years to build a boat. Anyway, Lori said that she had never heard a sermon on the reading from Genesis 6. And considering the number of ministers in her family, I took that as a challenge. And what do you know? Quarantine will always provide. Here we are, already in week 5 of Quarantine. We have read about talking donkeys and fish dispensing coins. And today we step back from the fantastic to the mythic. We go from anomalies in stories about people who could be like us, generally, to a story about anomalies that are completely otherworldly. And we continue our dive into stranger stories. Stories that the lectionary dares not include. And we arrive at this moment, in this particular story, in the midst of biblical folk tales or Hebrew mythology. But right from the start, I want to make something very clear. So when I use the description of myth or folk tale, it is not derogatory. For the sake of our creation and flood stories in Genesis 1 through 11, it might be fair to say that myth in this sense is a story that happens outside the expected rules of physics or biology. See, these stories exist as an expression of a very particular cultural worldview, and to explain how the world as we know it came to be before humans could remember. These kinds of stories tell of fears and hopes and teach us in ways similar to parables. In particular, these creation and flood myths tell the story of God and the arrival of and relationship with humans, with us. So our reading, if you're not directly familiar, today is immediately building up to the flood story, and we get just the front end of that at the end of the story. The world is out of balance, the story says, maybe quite recognizable to our own, perhaps. Giant human-like creatures are roaming around. Maybe I would be considered a giant human-like creature a few thousand years ago, I don't know. People are populating everywhere, filling up the land and seemingly only concerned with doing what is evil. And the ark that is coming is a big boat, but like the ages of Noah and his ancestors, the people before the flood, the size is fantastic on purpose. But our hero is about to emerge. Noah is 600 years old when the water begins to fall and rise. Along with his family and a varied and unreliable number of animals, they will ride out the flood and lead on into reclaimed creation and a new relationship with God. See, one feature of Noah's boat that I find underappreciated is that it mentions no rudder. There's no evidence that it has a rudder. And Noah is not a seafarer. I mean, apparently he's not that good of a carpenter. It took him 100 years. So the survival of life depends upon the whims of the water and the care of God. Noah, like many good heroes of old, is more hapless than courageous, mostly just present. But like every great myth and story, the themes of floods and heroes are relocated and replanted and found over and over again. You see, when Moses was a baby, not Noah, but Moses, Pharaoh called for all newborn Hebrew boys to be killed. And fast forward the story to Advent and the story of Matthew, Herod the Great, wants all of the baby boys to be killed. Story revisited again. Anyway, Moses' mother, fearing for his life, placed him in a basket and sent him down the river. We're familiar with that story. And he found his way to the reeds and was discovered by a daughter of Pharaoh. Basket is the same Hebrew word used for ark. So he might survive the Nile flooding and overtaking his people in this basket or ark. And on the other side, step out onto dry land and set his people free. Well, let's get back to where we began. Nephilim, giants, heroes of old, or the children of the sons of God and human daughters. The heroes of old are roaming the earth. The Bible doesn't seem to have that positive a view. Nephilim is most directly translated as the fallen or the fallen ones. And it's a pretty short narrative anyway about these ancient heroes that commonly fill entire books of mythology and other Mesopotamian and Egyptian mythologies. But there is a similarity. In Greek mythology, Zeus would sneak to earth and marry women, and their children became great heroes and rulers of the earth and its kingdoms, representing, presumably, the greatness of Greece itself. But in Genesis, these sons of God or divine creatures do not bring greatness to the world, but evil. The other flood myths also have godlike heroes or powerful human heroes helping gods and mostly concerned with great cities and kingdoms. Thinking of the story of Gilgamesh and others. See, God and Noah don't seem to be that concerned with these themes, with great kingdoms or cities. There are no cities or kingdoms in the story that we read, just God and the people. See, as is the common theme throughout the biblical witness, the relationship between God and human beings is personal, not performative. So our hero, Noah, is not godlike, but rather a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Of course, after the flood, he does throw a raging party and is roaming around drunk and naked for a while. But anyway, that's for another day. Heroes aren't perfect. What I mean is that there are no heroes except for you and I, people like us. And we are not that reliable most of the time. What changes most on this side of the flood, what has changed the most, is God's posture towards Noah, God's posture towards us. See, traversing forward all the way to Jesus, who was not a Nephilim, even though the story of a God having a child with a young woman might strike a person as similar, at least, he is nonetheless connected back to the moments when the relationship between God, creation, and human beings was being worked out in the beginning and being reset. The child of God and Mary, the human one, a righteous man, blameless in his generation, the Son of Man, the Son of God, is once again reframing what it means to be human and to be in relationship with the creating force of the universe. So Jesus is revealing the changing posture of God towards us and doing so as a human being, as one of us. And the promotion still stands. No heroes need apply. Just people willing to step on to dry land and try again. It seems that God refuses to do it any other way. All right. So that was a lot. And I need a drink of water. So let's take a short break. If you have a cup of coffee or tea in front of you, just sit back and take a sip real quick. I need one. I actually do need one. So that's the story of Nephilim leading right up to the flood. And I'm always extremely interested in the power of stories to reframe reality. I was talking on the Tuesday morning group this last week that when I first discovered this reading in the Bible, I was fascinated for months. Because fiction, for me, the stories and fictional stories, whether they be true or not, have the power to actually reframe our reality. And I think the president's press conferences are banking on this. There are already active revisionist histories being crafted about our current moment, all over the place. They span the spectrum. On the other side of this strange period, more of an evacuation than a flood, you might say, we will be asked to accept any number of stories about what happened. And the thing is when you're in the middle of a traumatic moment, your memory is sometimes not all that reliable. So it matters which one, which memory, which story, which myth of what happened we choose to accept. And which one we do choose will tell us primarily about the driving values of our worldview and the worldview of our own society. See, the narratives that will be used will create public policy that will affect decades. And the narratives that will be used have the potential to foment resentment among different groups of people. They will attempt to frame how our new reality came to be through that struggle of separation. And these stories will undoubtedly mostly reveal our petty fears and our distorted hopes more than they will give us a full accounting of what actually happened. But this is the nature of mythologies, whether 1,000 years old or from last week. How we read and hear them is a measure of our own character, our own hope in a risen Christ, a hero who triumphed through loss, not success. So the lines of connection we draw and the themes like resilience and resurrection will be there if we notice them. It may even reframe the time going forward how we relate to God, or maybe change God's posture towards us. Because what remains true is that our God is personal, not performative. The connection between humanity and God is one of relationship, not an exercise of power. And there is no searching for great heroes right now. There are no saviors on white horses to be found. I mean, the Bible seems more comfortable with questionable characters than magnificent heroes. Even a good, unwitting fool tells a useful, if unreliable, story from time to time. And it is exactly because of this that we must remember the underlying reason for the stories we choose to tell. We tell the stories of our failings and our falling and our rising to say something about what animates our persistence in life. We remember myths full of heroes who were cast adrift rudderless, but for the grace of God on a turbulent sea. We retell stories of liberation through the struggle of a people following towards the way of freedom through the wilderness with nothing but God to walk with them. We proclaim an executed peasant rabbi as the true Lord of all in the face of overwhelming empires of death and greed. We join with heroes who fail as often as they succeed, full of feelings of rudderless wanderings, of feelings of abandonment, traversing seas not of our own making and trusting in the faithfulness of God, that God will be there when we get there. But in the moment before, when we are too full of ourselves and are sure that we can master it all like the great heroes of old, that is when we will step into the waters rising above our depths. And we will say that we didn't even see it coming. And in all of this, we do not escape life, but step into the fullness of life, no matter what future we are faced with. We don't need heroes. We simply need one another and the moving breath of God lifting us up for another day. Amen. All right, we have a fair amount to do in the next few minutes. If you are not able to stay with us during the meeting, may you go from this place finding the heroes, the everyday people around you, and telling the stories that bring life into the future. May you go in peace.